Well, joining us in the studio now is a man who's been directly involved in deadline day at a Premier League club, former Hull chairman Paul Duffen. A very good morning to you, Paul.
Good morning.
Lots to talk about, but Hull, of course, were the most active club in the August window. With the team in the relegation zone, how important is it that they do business this time round?
Well, this is a time of the season when football becomes more like a casino, and it's about playing poker, really. It's always a question of who's going to blink first. Nobody wants to be in this particular casino because you only really end up doing business in January if you either think you need a bit more to push at the top or you're concerned about your fortunes at the bottom of the league. With Hull City's particular circumstances, they've been very unfortunate with injuries over the past few months, and ironically on the weekend for the first time they had the first choice strike force back on the pitch. But goals have been a problem, and I think the balance is always, do you want to bring in a new face? Might risk upsetting the dressing room. Do you want to back the talent you've got? And fitness is a big problem. You know, the clubs who aren't scoring goals don't have the strength in depth necessarily to cover those goal-scoring positions, and as we all know, the striker is the most sought-after asset. So caveat emptor in January. It's not easy to find a bargain, but it's something you want to use as if you can, obviously complement your resources for the run-in.
Now, when you were chairman, 2009, same sort of scenario, slipping down the table, things looking dodgy. You bought Jimmy Bullard, who subsequently got injured. How do you differentiate between a panic buy and a shrewd bit of business?
It's one of those things. I mean, in the club, again, the profile of Hull City or clubs that come into the Premier League, you have to change your squad repeatedly. So our first window, we were coming up from having spent our time in the lower leagues and needed to refresh the entire squad to compete in the Premier League. At the end of that season, you then want to make sure that you've got the resources to stay. So you go again. So each summer, you're refreshing 8, 9, 10 players, which is very difficult. In a January window, and yeah, you're right, we had an objective to try and score more goals from midfield. So we were looking for a midfield goal scorer. Jimmy came in, as you say, sadly got injured, and it was a coup to get him to the club because it's one of those difficult things when you're a minnow in the Premier League, selling the attributes of the club to players who are coming to join you. There's always a danger when you do business on deadline day. Jimmy wasn't a deadline day signing, so we were able to go through all the normal processes, and obviously conducting full medicals and everything else is very important, and that becomes prejudiced on deadline day. Sometimes decisions look to be poor ones in hindsight, but I think you're a hostage to fortune of athletes being injured. The most important thing on deadline day is that clubs will have their own priorities. I think the most dangerous move on deadline day is one where it wasn't really something that you wanted as a club, but a player becomes available late in the day and the manager thinks that will be a great idea, and that's when it can be a borderline and difficult decision.
Now, a club record fee was spent on Abel Hernandez in August. We've spoken about the practicalities about introducing new players or sticking with your talent. What about money? How difficult is it on deadline day when opposition clubs want a lot of money, the player wants a lot of money? Just talk us through that.
Well, as I say, very much why I refer to it as a game of poker. On deadline day, everybody is chancing their arm. Players who want moves, their agents who are, in this context, their business advisor, other clubs who may be competing for that player, and there'll be internal pressures as well, because let's not forget, every football manager wants the most competent squad of players he can possibly have. Every manager has a different relationship with his chairman or director of football, so there'll be some mind games going on internally in clubs as well. But the most important thing is to try and stick to your guns. It's very difficult to understand sometimes how much truth and how much obfuscation is being told to you in terms of players' choices, how much the wages need to be, what the transfer fees are, who else is interested, and above all, as I say, you then got to be able to give yourself time to conduct the proper due diligence. So things that pop up on deadline day are very difficult. Very often the conversations have been going for some days or weeks beforehand, and then the transaction is enabled because a player will move somewhere else. And once that first domino falls, it allows everything else to take its place.
Yeah. How hard is it when you're a struggling club? I'll give you the Aaron Lennon example. We thought he was going to Hull. Now there's talk that perhaps he's not going to go to Hull after what happened at the weekend. So when you're struggling, how difficult is it to actually seal the deal and get a player in?
I'd be surprised if that one result made a big difference, to be honest. Obviously, there's a natural reason why Aaron would be attracted to Hull, because he's got 3 former teammates there now. And he would know that he's going to a side who were in the bottom 3 last week. They happen to be in the bottom 3 this morning as well. In some ways, it may be more that he wants to stay around the Lodge, Spurs training ground, and prove himself of value to Mauricio Pochettino. One of the other problems about a player who possibly still has international ambitions, but certainly believes in his own ability, is that to leave the club that's fighting at the top end of the division to join one who's got a relegation battle on their hands. And I think we probably all know that the bottom 8 or 9 clubs potentially have relegation battles on their hands. It's a difficult thing for your own career. Yes, you want pitch time, you want to be in the shop window, you want to be playing, but you don't want to miss an opportunity. And with Spurs still involved in multiple competitions, I think Aaron will be weighing up whether he's best served by training hard. We always hear the stories that a player's told by a manager he plays no further part in their plans. I'm very surprised when I hear that, because I don't think any manager would burn those bridges. Certainly a squad like Spurs needs to rebalance every now and again, and they may have their own ambitions on bringing players in later today, and they're looking on some they may move out. Like every big squad, there are several names attached in the Spurs squad with potential moves away from the club. But yeah, it's difficult if you're a club who are in the lower end of the Premier League. It's also difficult if you're not a traditionally glamorous club, and obviously if you're a Londoner and you're a city boy and you've been playing your football in London all your career, then moving to East Yorkshire might be something that's a bit daunting. But that's where the chairman or the manager really has to earn their corner and sell the proposition of all the things about the club, that the values that should inspire a player and attract him to come and join you.
Yeah. Not want to go to Yorkshire. Can't believe that, Alex.
Oh, what?
Paul, really interesting to get a chairman's view. We'll speak to you much more later on, but thanks for the moment.
Thank you.
Pleasure.